Greetings. Welcome to Thought for the Day. My name is Jeremy. About 3 weeks ago, on the 29th of October, I explained what causes climate change and why we have to take action to save God's world. This world is getting hotter. All living things are in danger if climate follows the present trend. That talk was just before COP26 started. Now COP26 is over. It has made good progress, but not as much as it hoped. Today I'd like to consider the future for each one of 4 very different world scenes. They are the Amazon, the Arctic, the Tropics, and Arid Lands. And I've got photo cards for each to show how it's going to work. The climate activist Greta Thunberg challenged the politicians and negotiators to do more than talk. Don't just blah, 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 she said. Take action, commit yourselves. Well, to some extent they did. But there are nearly 200 parties which all have to agree. So inevitably, every document gets diluted to suit the least committed. However, this time they did grasp the nettle and talk about the disaster caused by burning fossil fuels, which produces carbon dioxide, which thickens the atmosphere which surrounds the world, and that overheats the whole world. And they agreed that the rate of global temperature rise was much too steep. It must be slowed, then plateaued, and then eventually decreased to what it used to be, which is the temperature at which God, our Creator, set this world. All this must be achieved against a tight timetable, particularly the immediate steps ahead of us. Sadly, some countries, such as China, are so far behind the West that it would take years of burning coal to catch up. Also, predictably, countries such as Saudi Arabia, which are so wealthy from selling oil, they dread the prospect of us burning less oil. Other countries are so poor that unless the rich countries fund the change for them, they can't afford the alternatives. Current carbon emissions are already harming those poorer countries who did not cause the problem. COP26 has set stiff targets for next year, COP27, which will be in Egypt, and it will be crucial. This subject is vast and our time is limited, so here are those 4 world aspects to consider. They're based on our personal travels. When I retired, that is, retired from business, but not retired from the church, my wife and I decided that we would go and see a little bit more of God's wonderful world. So we went to see the Amazon, the Arctic, the Tropics, and Arid Lands, among other places. Starting with the Amazon. Here's my picture board. We travelled up the river Amazon with plenty of stops where we changed to ferry boats and then down to smaller boats so that we could see the villages and towns and meet the people. To follow the path which is shown in the top picture, just up here, we wore miners' helmets because of the falling large nuts from the high trees above. We wore waterproof clothing and over that waterproof ponchos, but we still got absolutely soaked, right through to the skin, just from the tropical rain. It was amazing. It bounced off the ground and upwards through all our clothing. But it was a great experience. It was very warm, and the paths are small and confusing. A picture here shows a house on stilts, designed to remain above the present levels. Here it is down here. That's fine for the water going up and down as it does at present, but If the forest is cleared and temperatures rise, the flooding will sweep away all such local people. Also in the bottom corner, there is a village church. Here it is. And the notice says Assembly of God. So that was what we saw of the Amazon. But just thinking about it, what of the area overall? The great Amazon rainforest is the lungs of the world, and now it has got smoker's cough as they cut and burn the great climate asset. The rest of the world can and will plant trees which in 20 years or so will be really helpful. COP26 tackled deforestation as a major problem, but also, and less in the news, forest fires. Picture of some poor person throwing water on a forest fire. Now we've heard a lot about the ones in America, but there are much bigger fires and far more extensive in Northern Europe, where fewer people are and we don't hear about it. So deforestation is happening in different ways and it needs to be tackled. But one of the ways is caused by overheating, and that's the big problem. Right, our second area, the Arctic. We had a glorious trip to the Arctic, landing in Svalbard in the archipelago on the island of Spitsbergen. The weather was variable. It was midsummer. Some of the time it blew a blizzard, and some of the time we sunned ourselves in t-shirts. Yes, in t-shirts, 600 miles from the North Pole. This was over 79 degrees north. We went into the church there, the most northerly church on earth, and to get to the service you had to go through the coffee lounge, a popular, friendly, open cafe where all were welcome. Now, the lower pictures here are the tundra, vast tundra above the tree line. It's like peat bogs. It stores massive quantities of CO2. It's beginning to thaw, and the CO2 is being released. These two little dots here are reindeer out there, and Jan looking out and feeling with her feet the sponginess, springiness of the tundra. But overall, the Arctic is the place where the annual temperature is rising the fastest. It's our great obvious indicator. The ice is melting widely. The ice mass is decreasing alarmingly at an increasing speed. Consequently, as global warming increases, sea levels will rise disastrously. We are watching it happen. The Arctic seems so remote from us, but the world problem has far-flung consequences. Moving on to my next area, the tropics. To get to the tropics, we had a cruise across the Indian Ocean, calling in, among other places, at the Andaman Islands, little islands in the Indian Ocean, which are like a saucer. And when the tsunami, nearly 10 years ago, swept across, it went up over the edge of the saucer, swept inland, and was trapped there, that water, forever, creating lakes on what had been farmland. And this poor chap here, his house had just remained on its stilts, but his little farm was entirely lost forever under the water. Just in one single day, it all was gone. Down here in this bottom corner, a tractor on a beach on an uninhabited island. It had been swept off the mainland and swept up the coast and landed out here. You also see water buffalo. The farmers use water buffalo to work their lightly flooded fields. But what hope for all of them when sea levels rise? So thinking of the tropics, here are very many poor people. Think of the whole of India living by rivers like the Ganges and so on, and as the waters rise, they flood. There are going to be massive displacement of people as the world temperature rises, so the rains get heavier, they last longer, and the floods become more widespread. And these disasters cost lives, homes and villages. The people are displaced and they become refugees, a great big refugee problem. Thus a problem caused elsewhere impacts here with consequences that will affect us all. My fourth area are the arid lands. And although we have been down to Australia and to South Africa, the arid lands here shown here are the eastern end of the Mediterranean, in Israel. The mountains, and where the ibex is, no rain there at all, and yet only a short distance from places such as the Jordan Valley, which are well cultivated and grow great crops, and Galilee, which is sort of like the breadbasket of Israel. Down below in this corner here with the camel, you can see Bedouin houses, still people living out there, and somehow their flocks still find grazing at the present moment. But as the temperatures rise on Earth, these areas will become arid. So there's just enough rain there at the moment to get by, and this applies equally to large parts of Africa, the Americas and Australia, Asia and so on. World temperatures rise, so those who live in these vast areas will experience droughts, crop failures, livestock starvation. They will no longer be able to garner a living. They'll be displaced in their millions, and so they will walk. They will become food refugees on a massive scale, heading for more temperate climates. So it's going to be tough for many, but the worldwide prospect of refugee masses on the move will result in everybody being affected. We have not taken good care of God's world. For 20 years we've turned a deaf ear to the climate warnings of David Attenborough, Prince Charles and others. The Queen challenged those at COP26 to leave politics behind and act as statesmen, putting the needs of the future above their needs to win votes. The time for just talk is past. The time for strong action is now. I consider my grandchildren. Here they are, my grandchildren. And future generations, for all of us future generations. Have we neglected our responsibility to make God's world a better place for them? During COP26, our Parliament talked about itself, and our media talked about Parliament. The general tone was, oh, of course we want the future to be okay, but we can leave that to the politicians, the scientists and others. They'll sort it out. Actually, our politicians follow the public mood. It's up to us to tell them if we think that the situation is desperate and needs top priority. Then we have to tell the politicians, the media, the pop stars, the role models, and everyone else who sets the agenda. Also, we have to set an example. Oh dear, who likes change? To finish, there's a lovely side story that has emerged from COP26. The two most powerful nations, who are also the greatest polluters, are the USA and China. Their representatives are John Kerry and Xi Zhenhaus. These two men have known each other and worked together for some 20 years. They're well-seasoned negotiators, but they also like each other. And they share notes of photos of their homes and their gardens, their family, and best of all, of their grandchildren. So they were the ones who surprised the world by producing a splendid joint intent of the USA and China to unite on progress. It is love, maybe love of grandchildren, that makes the world go round. I suggest that we too can each make a difference. Thank you for letting me share these thoughts. May God be with you. Goodbye.